Hey y'all, and welcome to another day of VEDA. Today is April 19th, and again, this isn't going to be a crafting related video, but rather a financial related video. And since finances kind of does play into our freedom in crafting, I've decided to share with you. And since it's kind of happy news, I decided that I wanted to devote today to the topic of debt and becoming debt-free, I guess, or completing baby step 3, and this time for real. I'll kind of get more into that and why in a minute. But anyway, so yeah, I was running some numbers earlier today and have discovered that once my husband sells back a week of vacation, we will have completed our 3 to 6 months emergency fund, which is the baby step 3 in Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover. Now, we have been running this program in our household for many years. We basically started a couple months after Jeremy was born. It was never that we were totally financially irresponsible. It's just we had a very, very tiny shovel, and even a moderate-sized hole with a tiny, teeny shovel takes a long time to pull one out of. So for us, this program took a very long time to get to this point. If you have been paying attention, you might notice that Jeremy is now 11. And like I said, we started this when he was just a couple months old, which is when I actually discovered talk radio. Yeah, I know. Kind of a funny thing for me to discover as a new mom, but that's what happened. And a normal average family, they have, I think they say their average is between like 18 months to 5 years for running up to this 3 to 6, and then baby steps 4, 5, and 6 all kind of run together. So yeah, we've actually been to sort of this point before, but again, it's a little more complex, so I'll get to that in a minute. So if you're new to the Total Money Makeover, basically baby step 1 is $1,000 in the bank. Baby step 2 is to pay off everything but your first home. Then baby step 3 is the 3 to 6 months emergency fund. And then 4, 5, 6 is basically putting in place things like retirement and college for your kids and things like that. And then baby step 7 would be to pay off that first home. So we are getting to the point where we are just focused on this house, which, like I said, we had kind of been here before. We had it to the point where we just had our home back in the town we used to live in. And even though my husband got his new job, which dramatically helped our financial situation, it also led us to this move into this house. And since we didn't need to sell the old house before we could move into this house, since our old house loan was the size of a normal car payment, I guess that's kind of what we were told, was that since it was so not like a factor into, we didn't have a car payment, so all we had was the house. And they're like, that doesn't really affect your being able to afford this house. So yeah, it's not how you should run things. But then again, I pretty much lived my life doing what you should not. Most of our situation came down to the point where we basically lived just above the poverty line for many years, and trying to avoid the soapbox that I can very easily get on when talking about SSI. Since I am disabled, I did receive SSI, so most people think that we were fine off. But what people don't realize is that once you make a certain amount, and that's not just you, that's your household income, so it was my husband's income, every $2 you make over that amount, it takes off $1 of your SSI. So we were at the point, not that SSI pays you a lot in the first place, but we had an income most of the 9 years we were in the other town of around 25,000 Some of those years it was less. I think towards the end it was a little over that. But yeah, our yearly income for a family of 3 to 4, most of those years it was 4, we had a income of $25,000 a year. And yeah, that's just not a lot of disposable income. So, like I said, very small shovel, even for not a very big hole. So, like I said, it took us a long time to get here because it was just a long road when you're trying to deal with not getting kicked off of SSI, but at the same time, there wasn't a way for me to add to our income being a mom of 2 and childcare being unreasonable. Yeah, that wasn't going to happen. Plus, paying for transportation and the fact that we lived on the end of town where there wasn't employment, it just made it completely financially undoable. I mean, there wasn't like jobs that I could do in the local area that anyone could think of. And so basically, I fell onto the crochet thing, which, as you all know, is not very financially helpful. It did help a little bit, but it's not a big income maker either. So, one of our struggles with doing the baby steps as written is that when you're on a program like SSI, they really dictate how much money you can have in the bank. And since I try to follow the rules at least as closely and legally as I can, we tried not to go over this. So, like baby step 1 with $1,000 in the bank, yes, you can have $2,000 in the bank for a single person and $3,000 in the bank for a family. Yeah, a family, not just per like another $1,000 per person in the household. You can have either $2,000 or $3,000. So when you get to the family of 4 scenario, $3,000 is not a lot of emergency money for anything. And this would include all your money for like your house payment and all your other bills. So anytime your accounts and they have access to your bank accounts, and believe me, if they get over $3,000, you have to verify exactly why it is over $3,000 or they will cut you off. Because a lot of this I have experience of because we did not ever adjust my husband's tax returns. Like he did try to adjust them when Jeremy was first born, but he still didn't have them adjusted enough considering the fact that we did get unearned income credit. So we did get big tax returns at that time, but we didn't adjust them because for 9 months we could have that income in our bank account. So that was like the only time we could have an emergency fund was when we had tax return. But again, you can only have that for 9 months. So we could have some money in the bank, which I usually use to shop for things like Christmas ahead of time because, yeah, we'd get our tax return sometime, usually in February, and then we'd have to have it all spent by the end of October or September. So going into Christmas and winter and being in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest, so yeah, cold winters, not exactly the time of year you want to go into no money in the bank account. So yeah, most of the time that $3,000 was just eaten up by our mortgage payment, our heating payment, and just those other little bills like food, gas, groceries, or I guess I already said food, but yeah, just those little things add up quickly to your $3,000. And so it is not a fun road to be on. So, okay, gonna avoiding soapbox. Um, so it did take us a long time to get to the point where we only had the one house, and even then, you still can't have more than, certain money in the bank. So yes, we probably spent a lot more money on just nicer things versus paying things off than we should have because we just, you you have to medicate somewhere, and so we probably did medicate a little bit with stuff versus paying off that house, but I don't think I've abused my children either. So I think hopefully, they still don't seem to realize how financially tight we kept things. So it's not like I did anything really over the top, but yet it was fairly over the top since most of my friends, as they will tell you, thought we were absolutely crazy. I still have friends that think I am crazy for trying to work this plan. And again, people didn't realize our income because they come from a situation where 90% of them, both parents in the family work, even if the mom or second income is smaller income, they still have two incomes and two fairly decent incomes compared to our one income. And yeah, so how we got out of our hole was that my husband did get to go back to school again with my avoiding soapbox. I can't remember if I covered this because I've kind of tried to re-record some things to try to avoid my soapboxes. But a problem with a lot of the programs is that they are for just the disabled person, even though your income is based on all people in the household. So whereas my husband was the one making the money, I was the only one who could qualify for certain programs, such as programs to go back to school to get an education, to eventually then go back into the marketplace. And I did seriously consider doing one of these, but again, mom of two kids at one time, it just, yeah, was not going to be an easy thing to do and a lot of stress. And again, my husband was the one that needed the education, not me. Not that I'm saying that I don't deserve an education, but he's definitely done a lot of good with the money that we spent on his education. And I'm not regretting the fact that I don't have a professional education because I still find myself very knowledgeable in very specific areas in places that a school cannot teach you. But yeah, so he went back to school and he got a 2-year degree in a technical field. He only took 18 months to get this 2-year degree as it is a online program, which actually turns out to be really awesome for him. He originally went back to school with one of his friends, but his friend kind of bailed on him. But he went ahead and persevered and went ahead and was like top of his class. He did graduate with honors, which is amazing considering the fact when he originally went to school, back when he was freshly out of high school, he had trouble just showing up for classes. So it's not that he's unintelligent, it's the fact that he had difficulty, being there. And so he didn't get the grades he needed and eventually dropped out due to those factors. And so this online, where basically by the time he got disinterested with a class, the class was already over because it was an accelerated speed program, which was really good for him because that kept him engaged long enough that he was able to finish all his classes, and he actually retained the information because that degree is exactly the field he is now working in, and that information was exactly what got him his job because he could go into his interview, which at that time they had never seen his degree before. So he was just asked to come in for an interview as kind of a, oh, let's see what this even means, haha kind of thing. And then he just blew them out of the water. Now, it did take him 2 times applying for this same job to actually get his position. But he found out through the grapevine later that he basically was already selected, but since he worked for the company, I think they knew he wasn't going anywhere and they knew this other position would be available. So he didn't get the job the first time around, but he did get it the second time around. And he basically, his second interview for it was just like, so what's been going on the last couple months, instead of, like, prove to us why we should give you this job. But anyways, back to our debt-free-ish story. So yeah, we are in a much happier place now. I'm no longer eligible for any sort of SSI and haven't been since my husband got his new job. The only kinds of assistance that we still qualify for is the kids are on reduced lunch for school, just barely, and me and the kids still qualify for government insurance. I am still covered under Medicaid somehow, and the boys are currently being covered on Hawkeye, which is I believe it's a state-run program for children, kind of to make health insurance more affordable for that gap between Medicaid and those that are more wealthy, I guess is kind of how I can basically describe it. But this whole trip with the government health insurance has been a total nightmare from day one. So again, avoiding all the soapboxes and hot topics, I'm not going to go in that. Just let you know that my experience is government health insurance continues to be a total nightmare for me and my family. Now, I can't give you an actual total rundown of how much debt we have paid off. I used to have a running total on my computer, but then I lost the access to Microsoft Word programs for some reason, and now I don't even have any kind of program on my computer for typing and stuff, so I don't still have access to that information. Plus, I always was confused on if you were supposed to just put in the payment or if you were supposed to just put in the principal amount. But just for an example, the original house loan that we had on our old house was I we can't even remember exactly what it was. It was either 63 or $65,000. Then we also have had a home equity loan on that house, which was I think $11,000. My husband has gone to school, and that's I think it cost us $8,000 total for his 18 months. So yeah, it wasn't a cheap degree, and he did qualify for grants. It was only 6,000. But yeah, we still had to pay down that. We also tended to live on credit cards during the time when SSI would not allow us to have any money in the bank. So we would pay them off and then gain them back and pay them off back and forth a lot, which again is not something you should do. You should cut off your credit cards. But as I said, us on the program with SSI, it wasn't a very doable thing for very easy, and I like a little less stress, so I allowed my husband to keep a credit card. I did not have one, but he has one that he still refuses to get rid of to this day. And then we have gotten a couple cars that we had to get small loans on, and then we paid them off. The biggest one that we had was when we got our HHR, that was $11,000 car payment, I think, which we paid off in a couple months, a couple years. It's even a couple years. It was by the next tax return. Like I said, we pretty much lived for that tax return because we could pay something off and then we could have that amount in the bank even if we were using that money. So we paid that off, and then now we've paid off our new van, which I haven't discussed yet because I'm still waiting to actually get a picture of it clean since our weather's been gross. It's not very pretty at the moment. And lastly, we did have a timeshare, which we also paid off really, really fast. But again, not something you should have, but again, something I can't talk my husband out of. So guys, I know this was kind of a long-winded story for me to basically tell you that we are now debt-free except for our house and have a emergency fund built up. And I'm not meaning to brag, but like I originally set this channel up for was to kind of share those unseen strands of life with, the unseen population. So Me being a disabled person and not able to do things as a normally family would, I wanted to share a little bit of our journey with you. If today was a little bit of information you're not really interested in, I'd like to remind you that tomorrow is our Finished Off Friday, so we will be back to the crafty goodness. We'll talk to you later, guys.